Hello, peoples, and welcome to Esoterica Cinema, the podcast where we take films from the cinematic multiverse and discuss the hell out of them. My name is Jason Peters. With me, as always, is the man who spent 7 years as Benicio del Toro's personal drug wrangler, Mr. Ryan Siebold.
What's up, Jason? How's it going, buddy?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. I am here and we are talking about movies, so really doesn't get too much better than that, man.
I know.
And for today, we are here to discuss an interesting film from a filmmaker who I historically have really not liked, but spoiler alert, actually really enjoyed this film. We are here to look at Wes Anderson's French Dispatch. Do you have a description for us, buddy?
I do, from 2021, which is shocking to me because I could have swore this was 22, but yeah, 2021. This is an older movie than I thought it was.
I just remember it was COVID lockdown. The years are all the same.
Yeah, it all kind of blended together. That's true. 2021's French Dispatch. Google has this described as a love letter to journalists set in an outpost of an American newspaper in a fictional 20th century French city that brings to life a collection of stories published in the French Dispatch magazine. This was directed by Wes Anderson and made on a budget of $25 million. Brought in a theatrical release of $46 million. So pretty consistent, I think, with the kind of return you'd expect from a Wes Anderson film. This was shot, as always, by longtime collaborator of Wes Anderson, Robert Yeoman. And there's some impeccable cinematography in this film. We're going to talk about all those things. Yeah. But before we do, I got to ask you, as always, Jason, what did you think about this movie, buddy?
Ryan, I'm going to be happy to tell you first. Do want to ask our audience, if you haven't yet, go ahead and please like and subscribe to this and all of our videos. Really helps out the algorithm. Show us some of that love, y'all. And then also, we do want to hear from you. If you agree or disagree with any aspect of this review, go ahead and drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Maybe we'll even get back to you. So, Ryan, one thing I want to say is that I really enjoyed this film. Again, it's kind of surprising because I'm not historically a huge Wes Anderson guy, but also kind of working against going into the film. I'm not a huge anthology guy when it comes to film.
Okay.
Even in like the written form, like anthologies are a nice sort of like palate cleanser from time to time, but I can't say that I really love them as much as I love just a full novel. And in that same way, I don't really love anthology films the same way that I would love a traditional narrative film. So you've got anthology film for a guy who doesn't love anthology films, Wes Anderson for a guy who doesn't love Wes Anderson films. I was a little nervous coming in here, and go figure, I really, really enjoyed it for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned and more. We'll dive into that shortly. Why don't you tell me what you thought?
High level, I love this movie, and I am a Wes Anderson fan. I just think that, man, you really got to be in the mood for some Wes Anderson. It's a very, very
specific thing, yeah, for
specific
sure.
thing that you're about to watch. He is an auteur by every definition of the word. Within just a few minutes, I could tell you, oh, that's a Wes Anderson directed film. Like, it's
7 seconds is all you need.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, aside from maybe the Coens would be the only other modern day auteurs that I could think of that are so easily identifiable by the way their dialogue is written, by the way they shoot, by the whimsy and playfulness of their characters and all the things narratively that are going on. There is so much going on in this film. Huge exposition dumps. It's so literary. So much so that you feel at times as though you're missing stuff and you want to pause and rewind it. You don't have to. It just warrants a rewatch. I think that this is one of those films that you could watch a few different times and get more out of it each time you watch it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think that this film is so well layered, both visually, stylistically. There are multiple mediums and aspect ratios. You got animation, black and white, hyper saturated color, 4:3. I mean, he's playing with some shit here. You would think that would all be a little overwhelming. At times it can be in Wes Anderson films. I'm looking at you, Grand Budapest Hotel. But yeah, and this one, maybe it was because of the novella styles, the fact that there were, short vignettes going on, that it made it a little more digestible. But so I didn't feel like I needed to gather all the information for a 2-hour narrative, that I'm just garnering enough to get me through the next 20 or 30 minutes. So, and then we move on. But they all are interconnected. Tons of talent in this film. We're going to get to all those things. But high level, I really love this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of touched on it, but I think the first aspect of this film that really jumps out is its visual style, right? And also coupled with that we can touch on later is the score. I think those two things work very much in synchronicity with one another to really establish the Wes Anderson aesthetic that we like think of. But it's, you know, his films are heavily stylized, first of all. They're also very idiosyncratic, right? You mentioned it. Like, no other film feels like a Wes Anderson film. Now, as cool as that is, I will say that I do think there's some legitimate criticisms that come along with that, right? And so for me, one of the aspects that's always held me back, and I think it shows in this film despite ultimately overcoming it because of its comedic sensibilities, is that these characters come at the expense of feeling like real people. Right?
Sure.
Even in this film, like, no Wes Anderson character feels like a real person.
Right.
It's not somebody you're going to meet in real life, out in public, out at the store. It's a very sort of literary type of character creation, right? And look, that's great. That's super cool, right? If you're going to tell, because this movie it's like broad. It's very broad, and it's almost like a caricature of these stories that it's telling, while also showing them respect. It's not disrespectful in the way that it's a caricature, but everything is so much larger than life, and the performances are all very broad, and like even down to like Tilda Swinton doing like the hammiest Barbara Walters impression you've ever heard in your life, right?
Yeah.
And it's great, it's fun, it's entertaining, but again, like, she's not a real person. She's doing a cartoon character, and a very fun one at that. So I do sort of get the criticism that a Wes Anderson character doesn't feel like a real person. Again, that's largely what I've struggled with in the past. But again, I think in the past he's also tried to tell very sort of human stories, and I think that for me it's hard to say, hey, here's a human story told by way of non-human characters. So then when you come to a movie like The French Dispatch, where it's like, hey, here's a non-human story told with non-human characters, like, cool, like those pieces fit together, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes juxtaposition works, like when we talked about before with the one we just did, Lone Wolf and Cub, but you know, sometimes I don't think it quite does with these films. So I think all of that adds up to make like a really fun experience, basically.
Right. And like the Coen brothers do that very well, you know, with making, because their characters aren't real life characters as well. But
some of them borderline, right? I think like Fargo actually does a pretty good
job.
Okay,
I'll give you that.
But but then you'll have like Raising Arizona, where like, they're just back to being cartoon characters,
or Big Lebowski, or Hudsucker Proxy that we've covered on this show.
They kind of do both. That's really interesting. I've never really considered that, but just as we're discussing this right now, like the Coen brothers have a weird thing where they'll go. Even we've talked about that in Hudsucker Proxy, right?
Right.
Where some of the characters felt like real people, and some of and then like you had these ancillary characters who were just giant cartoon characters and impressions of personas.
Sure.
That's interesting. I never really identified that.
But even in those moments with the Coens, I'm allowed to feel pathos or put myself in those characters' shoes and go along for that ride. I don't feel like I can ever do that with a Coen brother or with a Wes Anderson movie. Like Wes Anderson is just me watching a stage play. You know, it's me on the outside looking in, and it's very proscenium view shot. It feels very, stage play-esque. But it's fun, and it's full of whimsy, and it's so rich and textured, and everything he's doing so perfect. It's OCD to the nth degree. So he's not half-assing any of it. He is whole-assing all of it. So much so that it feels overwhelming at times. Wes Anderson to me is like a port wine or a rich dessert. Like, you really have to be in the mood for it, and it's to be taken in very small doses, which is why I was glad that, I know you give me a lot of shit about this, but I was glad that this movie was once again only an hour and a half, because I think watching 2+ hours of this would have made my eyes bleed. I mean, there's a lot going on that you're taking in.
There is, sure.
In every single shot. There's no shot that it feels glanced over or, oh, this is just an establishing shot. Everything means something. There's so much rich detail going on. The characters are like, so well developed. And most of them, by the way, are only on screen for moments. I feel like there were 47 actors that all had, 3 minutes of screen time in this film. So with the exception of just a few like Jeffrey Wright, that kind of stuck around, or Benicio del Toro, but great. Most of the film, I mean, blink and you'll miss Willem Dafoe. He's barely in this film. Even Bill Murray, that's Waltz, kind of anchors the whole cast, is not in this film very much and just has a few lines of dialogue. But as such, I feel like all the actors, because they were only on set for probably just a few days, could really lean in and give it their all and ham this shit up. Like you say, Tilda Swinton, with what I can only imagine is a dental fixture of sorts, to give her a bit of a lisp and a big toothy smile. Everybody is giving 120% and really hamming it up. And but the dialogue can be a little overwhelming. It feels very literary. The best comparison that I could give to this, I don't know have you ever read Kurt Vonnegut? Like, are you a fan of Kurt Vonnegut? Because that's what it seemed like to me, is like specifically the book Breakfast of Champions. That I think I in a conversation with you previously called The Breakfast Club. It's not The Breakfast Club at all.
It is not The Breakfast Club. No. Yes.
Yeah.
And also contains my personal nomination for the most oddly named protagonist of all time in Kilgore Trout.
Kilgore Trout. But Kilgore Trout could be a Wes Anderson character.
It sounds like you've got a bunch of peanut butter in your mouth. You're like, Kilgore Trout?
Yes.
Trying to,
But tell me that could not be a Wes Anderson character in The French Dispatch.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and you're right. Just because of the way that the dialogue is written, again, you noted it perfectly with the term literary, right? It oftentimes, the characters are reading this dialogue that you can imagine reading in a book. And while it's impressive, and while especially it provides, like Jeffrey Wright, for example, to do some wonderful things through voiceover narration, especially, it's almost too much, right? In terms of like, so you mentioned like the aesthetic can be too much, the visuals, the dialogue, etc. Sometimes the nature of the dialogue and how many words he's cramming in to a given passage, it can be a little much, right? In a book, if I'm reading a super dense passage with a lot of words and heavily specific vocabulary, I can pause, I can slow down to allow my mind time to sort of digest. I can go back and reread something if it didn't 100% process, and it doesn't interrupt that reading experience, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, with a film, we don't have that same luxury. We can't just stop and rewind in the middle of a darkened theater with a bunch of people around us. And so there are times where you do miss stuff, but also I think it's not necessarily in the sense of like, oh, but it's super rewarding to go back and see what you missed, right? You kind of just, you capture the overall flair, even if you're missing some of the specific words. But it actually turns out that like economy of dialogue is not something that he was going for on this one.
Right.
Like, he is spending 10 words to say 5, right? Like, arguably too many words in this film, right?
Sure.
I forget what film that's from. There's a film where it's like, oh, there's too many words. If anybody watching remembers that film, please put it in the comments. It's going to drive me crazy. But someone had the problem with the script having too many words.
I think there are moments in Wes Anderson films too that, you get the gist and you can move past it. Like, it's obviously the dialogue is very dense. I also will feel, but finishing my thought, this is not one of those films. I feel like there's a lot of necessary stuff that you need to pick up, especially in the first act of the film, where he's setting up what the French Dispatch is, who these characters are, what world we're living in, and then we kind of move on from there. But
by the way, let me interrupt real quick by just saying, do you think that their financial troubles had anything to do with the fact that they were a department based out of France that wrote for a seemingly a very small local newspaper in Kansas? Does that seem like it's a financially viable business model?
Not at all.
Just asking questions.
Yeah. It was like social media before social media existed, I guess. It's trying to globally connect us. But yeah, couldn't imagine why. The whole thing seemed like an act of self-indulgence by these people that just wanted to go tour around and fuck off.
Yeah.
So I think that was more or less the point.
Having fun with it.
Yeah. These are frivolous folks. But
by the way, also, I love that the town is called Ennui-sur-Blasé, right? Like, ennui is when you're just like, there's no meaning to life. Everything is meaningless. And blasé is when you're just like, find everything to be completely boring.
I didn't pick up on that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Apparently the literal French translation is boredom on apathetic.
Nice. I will say too that this film and some of his more recent ones like Grand Budapest have seemingly gotten more dense. Like he seems to be leaning more into that. Whereas if you go into his earlier work like Royal Tenenbaums or Life Aquatic, stuff that, or even Fantastic Mr. Fox, that's my personal favorite of his.
Nice.
It's playful and it's definitely dense, but he gives you those moments to digest before just moving right on. But this is just like so much thrown at you that it just felt like a really, really rich dessert. Like that you only need like that much of, and it comes on the little plate and it's all drizzled with the sauce and stuff. But you take one little bite and you're like, oh my God, like it just, it's very, very intense. Yeah.
Guy Fieri just took me to Flavor Town.
Right. But in spite of all of that, it wasn't so high art that it lost its sense of fun and playfulness and whimsy. It allowed you to be a kid, in your mind, kind of going along this thing and laugh. The jokes landed with me. I thought it was very funny at times. Chalamet has a line, something along the lines of, "I'm still shy about my new muscles, but her large stupid eyes watched me pee," or something like that. Like very, very high art, but still like totally silly and stupid, and so you can just kind of laugh along and roll with the punches. The Benicio del Toro stuff, again, cutting back and forth between color, black and white, 4:3 aspect ratio, and some really cool cinematography. There's a whole ass action scene in the prison that freeze frames. And you've got Adrian Brody in there and everybody's great, kung fu fighting and throwing bottles and stuff. And everybody is frozen, but you could tell that they're just like holding that pose and things are being suspended as Benicio stands up and walks through the frame and interacts with certain people. And some people are kind of moving. Everybody's, kind of just like frozen, holding the poses of action and stuff. So, again, very whimsical, very fun. And the jokes land with me always. I do love me some Wes Anderson in very small doses, limited engagement with that guy.
Yeah, and that sequence in particular is great. So that's like a theatrical device known as tableau, right? Where the actors all like kind of make like a living painting or something, And so he basically takes that and sets up like a series of them that reflect this bar fight, and the camera uninterruptedly like goes from one to the other. And that sequence was spectacular. It's funny, you mentioned earlier that his films do have this theatrical quality, and that's absolutely true. And to me, I'll take it a step further. This guy, to me, Wes Anderson, when I watch his films, I'm like, this is the cinematic equivalent of playing with dolls. He just feels like he's playing with dolls using actors and sets that are actually just like real life size or something, right? But in his head, he's like, and then I've got my little Bill Murray who comes down and he addresses the thing. Oh, and then, look, it's our friend Kate Moss, and she's like blah 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 blah, right? And then we cut over here, and Owen Wilson goes up the dream house, right? And it's it just feels like he's playing with dolls the entire time, and then he puts on this music that sounds like this fanciful teapot music. I don't know, the Beatles were commissioned to do this melody for a series of music boxes or something, right? Everything's just whimsical and fancy free.
Jaunty is also the word that I would use to describe the score here. It's very jaunty.
Absolutely. It's also what I'll say as well. It's also why I find it somewhat, I still don't know the right word, but it always calls attention to himself, or to itself rather, when his characters use profanity. And I still don't really know why he has them use profanity, because nothing about his style and says that his characters should, and they don't really, they'll just drop a random F-bomb somewhere. And it so sticks out because it's I feel like I'm playing with 9-year-old girls, and all of a sudden someone dad just came in and dropped an F-bomb or something. Right. And you're I wouldn't normally think twice about this. I have the mouth of a sailor, but in this specific environment, it seems odd.
It definitely stands out. It might be intended to stand out. But
I'm sure it does. Yeah,
I agree.
I'm not a kid, guys. See, I'm cool. I can drop F-bombs every now and then.
To your point, with the playing with dolls analogy, it has an innocence to it, and maybe that's why Fantastic Mr. Fox is one of my favorites of his, just because it really does lean into him playing with dolls. It's the stop motion animation and all of that. So,
most of his films are rated R. There is no reason for most of his films to be rated R. And it's because he just randomly inserts these F-bombs, I guess, to remind people that he's still an adult or something. It's weird. I don't get it.
Very strange. Yeah. Because again, the overall aesthetic to his films is very highbrow. It is very innocent. It's playful and whimsical. And then, all of a sudden that. And so it stands out like a sore thumb every time. I agree with you.
Yeah. Also, just for everyone who isn't familiar with us, like, we get down on some F-bombs around here. We have no problem with it.
Fucking
but it's
right.
like, make it consistent, right?
Fucking right.
Absolutely. But we're dumb idiots. We can drop F-bombs and it sounds organic. When
Sure.
you've got like Jeffrey Wright doing this like 8-minute monologue with this like, his super acting chops and stuff like that. Like, nah, dude, just leave the man and his eloquence, right? Like, don't cheapen that dude's vibe, like, we have dumbass vibes, so give us the F-bombs.
It
but
doesn't
not Jeffrey, right?
bother me. It just stands out, it's an odd choice.
It's an odd, exactly.
But
100%.
let him have it. I think,
Sure. It doesn't take away from the film. It's just something I
definitely does
noticed
not.
that I just kind of wanted to put out.
Sure,
there. Like,
right.
It's not affecting my score to any sort of degree. It's just a kind of thing where I'm like, I don't quite understand that. And even after considering it for a time, I still don't,
Sure. Yeah.
So
I don't
anyways,
either. I have got no answers for you.
Yeah.
But as is the case, with every Wes Anderson film, you got the art department on full blast, set deck going bananas. It's a beautiful film to watch with Robert Yeoman cinematography, tons of detail and texture, right down to the moving background when Owen Wilson is riding his bike, and lots of old style, camera tricks and stuff like that. And then, the cutaways like he does in Life Aquatic, where he shows the side of the ship. He's got a lot of that in here as well, where he'll go, cut away the side of a building so you can see the skeleton of the building and watching everybody moving inside and what they're doing, going up and down ladders and using dumb waiters and things like that. So, kind of takes it back to a very innocent, old school style of filmmaking. And it's just fun to watch. And this is all of those things working harmoniously on full display. And but again, I think because it is a vignette style film with a few different short stories, I think that made it a little more palatable to me. I got to go back and give Grand Budapest another go. I just wasn't in the mood for how heavy handed that was right out the gate. But it does look fantastic. Going back, some of his earlier work are some of my favorite films. I love Darjeeling Limited. A lot of people don't give that film a lot of credit. That one's a big one for me. I really love that one.
Never saw that one.
Life Aquatic, obviously, classic. And Fantastic Mr. Fox. I think those are. And then I'll give you another one. I've never seen Moonrise Kingdom. I think that's what it's called. And shame on me. I've heard nothing but great things about that film. People love that movie. So there's some more meat on the old Wes Anderson bone, if you will. I need to go back and get to. And this kind of reminded me of that. I've parked my Wes Anderson viewing experience for too long. I need to go back and watch some of these. Just gonna have to give it a few months to digest this.
And the cool thing is that we do have several of those on our master list for those people who are watching who aren't familiar with our program. When we're gonna get into our long form, like kicking off the regular season full bore, we're gonna do significantly longer reviews, and those are actually gonna come off of a master list that we select from at random. So we never really know exactly what film we're gonna be looking at. It's a lot of fun. Allows us to check out some films that are sort of outside the usual radar. So hey, maybe we'll get Moonrise Kingdom or Grand Budapest Hotel, and I'm pretty sure we have Fantastic Mr. Fox on there as well.
Fingers crossed.
So should be fun. Yeah. Now, one other thing I loved about this film is that there's a lot of really specific moments in the film that work because they're either beautiful or they're creative or what have you. Right off the bat, I love the way the film pretty much opens on that sort of rotating dumbwaiter, and everybody's coming through and like rotating it and putting like a different item on as it goes around, and we hear the music, and it's just a sort of static shot there, right? I love the way that Owen Wilson is sort of walking up the static proscenium shot and like popping up here and there on the stairs of the hotel and the windows. You mentioned the tableau sequence, which I really loved. That was amazing. And then there's also a really great scene in the jail where it shows a passage of time. It's very, very simply done, where they have I believe it's a de-aged Benicio del Toro, and he's like sitting there,
it's actually an actor.
And it is. It's an actor. Great. Okay. And so, and then Benicio del Toro, the old and actual Benicio del Toro, just comes in and taps him on the shoulder. The guy gets up and moves, and Benicio del Toro sits down. Really creative way of showing this tremendous passage of time. And then even you mentioned at the very top, this whole ass animated sequence that's done in the style of French comic book artist Moebius, very famous over there. So just again, like
Right.
kitchen sink approach to filmmaking, right? Like just everything in there all at once, everything everywhere all at once, right? That's this film.
But to be able to do it with such precision and such detail, like,
yeah,
I don't know how that man spins so many plates, does all these things so well, in so many different, mediums, and then also cranks out movies so quickly. I mean, this guy's got like a Woody Allen release schedule where he's got movies coming out literally every other year. It's bananas that he's already working on the next one, and he just dropped Asteroid City. So,
wow.
I mean, I think it's just studios love him. He's an indie darling. He wins a ton of awards, and
Well,
he
don't
always
forget his
gets
films make
back.
money too. That's the thing. His films make money, which is why he gets to keep making them.
And they don't cost very much. I think this was like 25 million. And he, brought in
that's about his average.
about
that he
50
gets,
million.
probably.
So he's like doubling his budget always. So can't hate on that.
Good on him, man. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here with a feature that we like to do on this program called 3 Adjectives, right? That's where we give our 3 adjectives that best describe our response to the film in question. Ryan, give us your 3 adjectives that best wrap up your experience with The French Dispatch.
This one's going to be quick and easy. It's stuffed because it is. For an hour and a half film, this movie is stuffed to the gills with everything you could imagine, from the dialogue, like we said, the literary monologues, the visuals, the different mediums, all the things. For an hour and a half film, you're getting your freaking money's worth. The next one is perfect because for as stuffed as it is, not a hair is out of place. Everything is just exactly the way he wants it to be. I could only imagine, I hope he sleeps well at night because he did a great job. Then the last one is niche because you really have to be in the mood for this. These are not films you could recommend to just everybody. I don't know that my parents would like this movie. I personally love these movies. You just really got to be in the mood for them. They are very niche and they are what they are. So, but if you are in the mood for them, they are perfect and they are stuffed. So good for you. Good on you. Do the thing. Enjoy it. Eat it up.
Definitely. All right. For mine, I'm going to go with what I call my alliterative edition. This is where I just do like so little alliterations with these. So here we go. 3 alliterations back to back. First is wonderfully whimsical. The second is stylistically self-assured. That's a triple. That one's really good.
Damn. Yeah. That's a good one.
Charming as a cherub. And let me tell you, I have met many a cherub, and they are all equally charming. Love those guys. All of this amounted to a star rating for Jason of 4.25 out of 5 stars. How about for you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm giving this one 4.5 stars, man. I love this movie.
Awesome.
It's as close to perfect as you can get. I don't even know why I didn't give it 5 stars. I probably should have, but 4.5.
For me, it's just, again, like, even though I don't usually like anthologies, I will say that in this respect, I like this one way more than like most all the other ones I've seen, but it still was a thing where it's like, okay, like these are cartoon characters,
right.
Like it's a series of short stories. Like I can only get so invested in what's going on, but I'm not going to say it's all style and no substance, because I think there is substance there, but I think it's way more style than substance.
Right.
And so it's great. It's awesome. I loved it. We just talked about all that and more. But I can only become so emotionally invested in that, I guess is what it is.
I'll agree with you.
It knows what it is, and it's not making apologies,
Right. And I'll agree with you there and raise you the fact that you really do, like, you really got to be in the mood for something like this. Whereas, like, I think the Coens are more 5-star for me because it's just like Ballad of Buster Scruggs or, Fargo or something like that. Like, that can just be on television and I'll leave it on. Like, I just love those movies so much. And I do think also that Wes Anderson has given us those movies too, that I've seen that, again, like A Life Aquatic or Royal Tenenbaums or something like that, or Fantastic Mr. Fox, that if it's on, I'll leave it on. I could watch those any day of the week, any moment in time. This one, I can't just, depending on who I have over, if we're going to watch a movie together, I would skip past this in a lot of cases. I wouldn't recommend this to just anybody. You really got to be a film nerd or a literary nerd to really appreciate this. But if you are, man, this is the best version of that thing. So 4.5 stars.
Absolutely. And if you are, go ahead and please leave a comment in the comments section below. Let us know what you thought about this movie, what you thought about our review. And then, of course, do show us that love with that like and subscribe. It really helps us out with the algorithm. We appreciate it. For Jason Peters and Ryan Siebold, this has been Esoterica Cinema. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the movies.